Hey there, I'm glad you decided to click my video link and watch this. YouTube keeps telling me that over 2/3 of my audience are new viewers or people that are unsubscribed to the channel. So welcome to Combat Yet Effective. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons before you click to your next video. Last week we showed you the aftermath of a failed frontal assault by the Russian 155th Naval Infantry Brigade against the Ukrainian defenders of the town of Vuhledar. The Russians have been slowly advancing in this area since December, when they took the town of Pavlivka, following other disastrous frontal assaults and more mounting losses. So I'm sure a few of you are asking, why are these towns so important that the Russians would try to use a heavy armored assault straight at the Ukrainians through an open field? Is the town itself that important? Well, I would love to tell you that Vuhledar is some major crossroads that could flank the entire Ukrainian lines. The simple fact is that Vuhledar is only a step in the direction of such a crossroad. The real truth is a lot more blurry than crystal clear. For starters, the town is really along a pathway that does lead to a bigger crossroad, the city of Kostiantynivka. I know a few of you will remember from a previous video where I said that name as an important target outside of Bakhmut and are probably thinking that these two battlefields connect to each other. They don't. Don't worry too much about the city name. You will find a lot of cities in Ukraine that have the exact same name. For example, when I was researching Pavlivka to find out where it was, I found another town of Pavlivka that is outside of Chernihiv, north of Kiev. When the story of the Russian losses in November said Pavlivka, but not which oblast it was part of, I was immediately confused since the Russians have been gone from the Kiev area since last April. Anyway, back to why Vuhledar is important to the Russians. The town does lead to a crossroads further along, but with how hard the fight has been so far, I don't know if they have enough troops in Russia to get all the way there, especially with the losses they are taking just to get close to Vuhledar. There are some resources nearby in the form of coal mines that are north of the town. In fact, at least 3 large coal mines are north of the town. But when you look closer at the map and where the Russian front lines are, it becomes a little more clear. Vuhledar sits in an area that has created a bend in the Russian lines. The Russians are trying to gain this foothold for 2 reasons. This will allow them to create a more unified front line that goes all the way through Donetsk for one, and more unified front lines leads to better logistics. But the other reason is about how tenuous the Russian positions are in the region. Not far to the southeast, in Russian-controlled Donetsk, is the town of Volnovka, a town a scant 10 miles from Ukrainian-held lines. Though the town is pretty small when compared to places like Kherson or Mariupol or Donetsk, its importance to both sides cannot be ignored. This town is a railroad junction. These rail lines are the only rail lines that lead to Crimea through the overland route, instead of over the Kerch Bridge, which was already attacked late last year. With the Ukrainians this close to such a vital crossroads, it then means that all supplies that travel along this route would be in range of Ukrainian artillery, and in the event of a Ukrainian offensive, could cut the railroad entirely and leave the Russians scrambling to take the town back while their supply lines to Crimea and Melitopol hang by a thread. And this is what Russia is trying to avoid, not only here in Vuhledar, but the push near Bakhmut and further north near the towns of Svatova and Kreminna. It is all about supply lines. While in most cases, if Ukraine loses a crossroad town, they could simply fall back to another position and use roads behind them to move troops and weapons to the new lines. The Russians don't have that luxury. Modern combat relies heavily on speed and maneuver, and all of that requires good logistics to keep food, fuel, and ammunition getting to the troops at the front. While a tank or an armored vehicle can easily go across rough terrain to seize an objective or bypass it if necessary, all of those cargo trucks have a much tougher time with it and are some of the juiciest targets to hit. Therefore, when anyone plans an offensive, their goals always include the crossroads towns to keep their lines of supply and communication open. With this in mind, what is the likelihood of further advances along this path? Well, that depends on 2 things. the will of the Ukrainians to hold these towns and fight as tenaciously as they have, and the second is if the Russians have enough forces to keep pouring in and losing to sustain the offensive. If November and December and this week are any indication, the Russians may have lost somewhere around 1,500 men, along with close to a third of the tanks from both the 40th and 155th Naval Infantry Brigades in the slow march north. They lost all of that in a distance of about 3 miles. Kostiantynivka is about 10 miles away. If the Russians keep doing these costly frontal assaults, they may stand to lose another 4,500 troops and another battalion worth of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, 40 or so of each while doing this. If I were one of the Russians in this sector, I would be thinking more of surrendering to the Ukrainians than taking another suicidal charge into their lines. I think I would have a better chance of surviving for another day and seeing my loved ones again. Thank you for watching. If you stayed to the end of this video, then please leave a comment below. Also, if this is your first time here, be sure to check out our new page on Rumble. I would prefer to move more of this content to there, as there is less of a chance that it will be censored by YouTube.